You're not going to believe what these people from the mainstream media think about Americans and Christians who don't completely agree with them.
I think Bernie Sanders is wrong. I think the more relevant question actually is, what is wrong with America?
Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not.
I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have.
But it's not just misogyny from white men. It's misogyny from Hispanic men.
Right.
It's misogyny from black men, things we've all been talking about, who do not want a woman leading them.
And because that fear was there, he fed off of it.
Yeah.
And people bought it, hook, line, and sinker. And that's why he's the president.
A majority of Gen X voted to turn America into an autocracy and to condemn our kids and grandkids to a far-right Supreme Court, probably for the rest of their lives.
Again, who are these people? Where are they coming from, and who raised them, and how did Donald Trump twist their point of view so much in 9 years?
We've laid out the stakes in this crucial election, where one side stands for freedom while the other meets the textbook definition of fascism, namely a far-right dictatorial regime like Hitler's Germany or Franco's Spain or Mussolini's Italy.
You compared his supporters to Nazis. You called him a fascist, a racist, a dictator. And now that he is elected, you're telling me that Americans are going on with their lives?
Elites in the mainstream media like Sunny Hostin, Joy Reid, Joe Scarborough, and Joy Reid scorn everyone who doesn't think exactly like them. Even if this includes over half of the country who voted for Donald Trump, not necessarily because they agree with everything about him, but because they think his positions are far preferable to the leftist policies of Kamala Harris. They are completely deluded in thinking they are morally superior to everyone who disagrees with them. Let's take a look at some unbelievable things they are saying about normal people and Christians who have different points of view than they have. Progressing in intensity to one guest saying something that leaves everyone on The View completely speechless. The women of The View are arguably the most delusional and out-of-touch people in mainstream media. Just watch Sunny Hostin and Joy Reid's anger and body language as they refuse to accept that maybe they're the ones who might be in the wrong.
I disagree.
All right.
I think that I'd like to reframe the conversation. I think Bernie Sanders is wrong. I think the more relevant question actually is, what is wrong with America? I think what is wrong with our country that the Republican Party would choose as a candidate and support a candidate who is an insurrectionist, who is an election denier, someone who has been accused of alleged sexual misconduct by 26 women, found liable for sexual abuse. What is wrong with this country that they would choose a message of divisiveness, of xenophobia, of racism, of misogyny, over a message of inclusiveness, a message for the people, by the people, of the people. That's what the problem is. It's the Republican Party.
But can I
what's wrong with America?
Something before we can do a second? The Democrats are the ones. They are the party that cares for the blue collar voter. The Democrats are the ones who put in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, union protection,
ACA,
unemployment insurance, and Obamacare. The Republican Party doesn't give a rat's patootie about
clearly
it.
they didn't convince the voters of
So
that.
all I can deduce is that it's the messaging. It didn't get through to people. They're not paying attention. That's all.
Yeah,
because the Democrats have always been for the working people.
Exactly. And the Republicans don't care about it.
They're so angry and delusional. They see absolutely no problems with their own party, which basically supports defunding the police, censoring free speech and social media platforms like X, attacking and punishing white people while promoting discriminatory DEI practices, and being friendly towards terrorist organizations like Hamas while condemning Western allies like Israel. They completely don't understand normal people who want things like safe neighborhoods, the right to say what they believe without censorship, to not be demonized for being white or successful, and for men to not dominate women's sports. And when Sunny and Joy's co-hosts try to talk some sense into them, they double down and interrupt them, refusing to do any self-reflection.
I'm
think that the message of the Democrats sounded elitist. You don't have value in the society.
They
if you don't have a
sounded
college
that way,
degree.
but when you look at the proof,
but Joy, it's condescending. It's condescending. There is a
condescending.
The way that the left speaks to its voters. It really is.
A message of joy and inclusiveness?
No, the message of not being educated, being dumb, and what's wrong with America.
Who said that?
Sonny just did.
What is wrong with America?
My point here is that
that's not what Kamala Harris said.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
My point is, I don't blame Joe Biden. I don't blame Kamala Harris. Go back as far as you want. I blame a messaging within the Democratic Party.
You don't blame the Republican Party
Can I just finish my point, please? I obviously have a problem. Anyone has a problem with Donald Trump. The bigger question should be, yes, Sonny, why did they vote for him?
Yes.
In sweeping...
So they need to be introspective.
No. We need to be introspective. If we voted for Kamala Harris, we need to say, what didn't resonate with the voters? Do you know what didn't resonate with the voters? When they were saying we don't feel safe, and the left focused on defund the police and bail reform.
Yeah.
When they said we're worrying about... Can I just finish? Let me just finish real quickly. When they were focused on renaming...
It's only an hour show, ladies.
Joy. When they were focused on renaming schools, there were people saying, hey, students are destroying colleges. I paid for that. I sent them there. They can't learn. And everyone apologized for it and didn't want to attend to it. They also denied the border was a crisis and kept saying, no, it's fine. This is not a...
There was a border bill, though. There was a border bill.
Yes, but Joy, my point is they screamed. They didn't vote for him because he's a racist or a misogynist. They voted because they needed help in their everyday lives.
But Sarah,
the majority of this country, because every stat coming out on the people willing to self-reflect are showing these.
Oh, wait, they're going to say I'm a racist and a misogynist in the exit poll?
You really think 74 million people are racist? Every racist and misogynist voted for Donald Trump. Not everyone that voted for Donald Trump was a racist and misogynist.
I agree with that.
Everyone swept. They swept every category, and the reason they did is to say, hey, guys, no excuses this time. Yeah.
Look,
they lost everything.
There's still
a country that allows its environment to be ravaged, its children to be shot, its wealth to be hoarded, its workers to be exploited, its poor to starve, its cops to murder.
So you think America's the
country in trouble?
So America's the problem, and the voters
is not going to make it better.
Anna, hold it for the next segment, right? We'll be right back.
Are you noticing just how furious Sunny Hostin is? She just keeps interrupting her co-host, who was actually providing some insight into why Kamala Harris lost. And Sunny doubles down on how terrible all Trump supporters are. Sunny is incapable of seeing anything from the point of view of the other side. And she thinks that everything she believes is completely right and completely superior to every single thing that the other side believes. Sunny's co-host was completely right. The reason why Donald Trump won is because people are tired of the elitism and snobbery of people like Sunny Hostin. There's maybe only one mainstream media host who is on the same level as Sunny Hostin and Joy Behar in terms of delusional moral superiority, and that's MSNBC's Joy Reid. Take a look at Reid's response to the election and who she blames.
But in the end, if they didn't make their numbers and essentially exceed the numbers that Joe Biden had in the suburbs, and I think we have to be blunt about why. Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That is what it appears happened in that state, is that if you can't flip enough white women, and we've talked about this on this set numerous times, is that you have a state where you've got a 6-week or 12-week. I think theirs might be 12 weeks. Yep. But it's a state where women lost their reproductive rights, where there was a very heavy push to get women to focus on not putting in place, re-electing, putting back into the White House the person who was responsible for taking those rights away and restoring them. But that message obviously was not enough to get enough white women to vote for Vice President Harris, a fellow woman. This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And, God bless Shannon Watts, who has tried to have that conversation. But if people aren't receptive to it, and if people vote more, party line or more on race than on gender and on protecting their gender, there's really not much more that you can do but tell people what the risks are and leave it to them to do the right thing.
Joy Reid is blaming white women for not voting to quote-unquote protect their gender, as if the most important thing in all of these women's lives should be to be able to end the lives of their preborn human babies. She says that it's the quote-unquote right thing for these women to vote to make it legal to end the lives of human babies. Reid can't even grasp the possibility that maybe a lot of women actually think it's wrong to end the lives of human babies, or maybe that a lot of women have higher priorities such as safe neighborhoods or a good economy. But I'm happy for Reid to keep alienating these kinds of women from her party. Here's the hosts of The View once again trying to cope with the fact that a majority of Americans rejected its worldview. And again, pay close attention to the kinds of things that Sunny Hostin is saying.
Was red.
Yeah.
It was pretty red last night.
I don't know. I'm profoundly disturbed. I think if you look at the New York Times this morning, the headline was America makes a perilous choice. I think that in 2016, we didn't know what we would get from a Trump administration, but we know now. And we know now that he will have almost unfettered power. And so I worry, not about myself, actually. I don't worry about my station in life. I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have. And I remember my father telling me many, many years ago that I was the first person in his family to enjoy full civil rights. And now I have less civil rights than I had when he told me that.
What world is Sunny Hostin living in? First of all, she used the wrong word. It should have been fewer rights, not less rights. And second, how do women have fewer rights under a Donald Trump presidency? Does Sunny think it's a right for women to be able to end the lives of preborn babies? That's actually not a right. That's just evil. And even if it was a right, which it isn't and shouldn't be, Sunny still makes no sense because first of all, it's still actually legal to end the lives of human babies in many states, because states still have the power to decide that. And second of all, Trump is actually, unfortunately, pretty much the most pro-choice Republican to ever take office. He stands against federal legislation to regulate it, and he has opposed a lot of pro-life legislation.
So again, I'm profoundly disturbed that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution did not prevent someone who participated in an insurrection from becoming president of the United States. I think that going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country, because I remember applying for my jobs as a federal prosecutor, and there was a box for convicted felons.
Well,
and so that box better be taken off. And I think our healthcare system is now at risk. I think
no fluoride for anyone.
Yeah, economists have made clear that he's going to increase the debt by $7.75 trillion. I'm worried about mass deportation and internment camps, and I'm also worried about Elon Musk warning Americans to prepare for temporary hardship.
But she doesn't seem to be worried at all about her party's desire to abolish the police, which has dramatically increased crime in neighborhoods all across America, or about the demonization of people who are white or successful. She's completely blind to the concerns of over half of the American population, and she can only see her own biased perspective.
I'm surprised at the result, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Well, I think it, I think it has to do with a lot of things, that being one of them. I'm obviously very disappointed. I'm very sad. I was at the Kamala Harris headquarters yesterday in Washington, and it was a very sad scene. The mood turned immediately, and I tell you, there's a quote I get a lot of inspiration from, and it's a quote that I read when I was reading about John F. Kennedy, and it says, "Whether I am on the winning or the losing side is not the point with me. It is being on the side where my sympathies lie that matters." And that, to me, brought me a consolation and inspiration this morning, because I have no regrets.
Yep.
I worked hard as hell to elect the first Black Asian woman president. History slipped through our fingers again. I worked hard as hell for Donald Trump not to be president. But today, unlike Donald Trump and his followers, I acknowledge that he won. Mm-hmm. I hope for the best for our country, and I make a commitment to our LGBTQ, to our immigrants, to our elderly, to our young girls, to the women, that we will not stop fighting. We can be sad today. Yeah.
It's understandable that these people are sad, but I also think it would be good for them to take a good hard look in the mirror to understand why their worldview was completely rejected by most of the American people. But I kind of doubt they're going to do that. Joe Scarborough is about as arrogant as all of the women we have covered so far. In fact, MSNBC actually pulled his show from the air after the Trump shooting because it didn't want to risk Joe saying something really offensive. Let's take a look at who Joe and his guest Al Sharpton blame after the election.
I just say, Rev, really quickly, too. Democrats need to be mature, and they need to be honest. And they need to say, yes, there's misogyny. But it's not just misogyny from white men. Mm-hmm. It's misogyny from Hispanic men.
Right.
It's misogyny from black men, things we've all been talking about, who do not want a woman leading them. Might be race issues with Hispanics. They don't want a black woman as president of the United States. You know, the Democratic Party, I've always found when you're sitting around talking, they love to just sort of balkanize everybody into these separate groups and say, oh, white people don't like women and black people. No, it is time for the Democrats to say, okay, and you and I have talked about this before, a lot of Hispanic voters have problems with black candidates.
Right.
A lot
and
of,
with other Hispanics. You've got some that don't like each other. And some of the most misogynist things I've heard going on this Get Out the Vote tour came from black men. I mean, misogynist things. So you're absolutely right. It's not simplistic, and we've got to have real honest conversations about it.
So they're blaming black and Latino men for being misogynistic, and they're blaming Latino men for being racist. They don't even consider the possibility that maybe Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party pushed these people away with their radical policies and disregard for the American people. Here's another clip of Stephen A. Smith on The View blaming the people on the other side being tricked by Trump instead of considering whether they themselves might actually be the problem.
And then Kamala Harris is inserted. I don't blame her one bit.
Same.
I thought she did a phenomenal job.
Yep.
She went all out. She did what she could. But you can't overcome that kind of situation. And remember, there's two C words that are incredibly important in America. Capitalism is one. Competition is another, because it's a metaphor for capitalism in a lot of people's eyes. Because you were inserted, even though you were the vice president and it was the Biden-Harris administration, you had folks who are independent. I'm not talking about those on the right, and I'm not talking about those on the left, just independents, who said, wait a minute, she didn't experience a primary either. And the last time we saw her in a primary was 4 years ago, and she didn't even make it to Iowa. They used that as an excuse to point to her level of inexperience. Then you got the war in Russia and Ukraine. You got the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Hamas and Hezbollah and all of that stuff. And you had Trump using codes. Look, do you want her? Where is she? Where's the interviews? Where's she showing herself? Where's the tough questions? Where's the interrogation? And he leaned on certain things. And you knew people were going to gravitate to that because right now, as divided as our country is, fear comes associated with that. And because that fear was there, he fed off of it.
Yeah.
And people bought it, hook, line, and sinker. And that's why he's the president.
Stephen says that the people who voted for Trump bought it hook, line, and sinker. And that's why Trump is now the president. He doesn't consider the possibility that maybe Trump actually was right about a lot of things, such as illegal immigration and crime, and that these people simply trusted him more than they trusted Kamala Harris. But for people like Stephen and the women of The View, there always needs to be something wrong with the people who voted for Trump and rejected the ideas of the people on The View. Here's Joy Reid blaming another group of people besides white women.
Yet it was the hip-hop and Hulk Hogan generation, the F Your Feelings latchkey kids who came up on Dynasty, Dallas, and The Apprentice, who were the lone age group that voted in a majority for Trump. A majority of Gen X voted to turn America into an autocracy and to condemn our kids and grandkids to a far-right Supreme Court, probably for the rest of their lives.
Or maybe they voted to protect their kids and grandkids from the evil policies of Joy Reid's party. Just a thought.
And it was not just Gen X, because while 91% of black women voted for Kamala Harris, 53% of white women overall voted for Trump, despite the open disrespect and demonization hurled by J.D. Vance and the Supreme Court stripping women's bodily autonomy, courtesy of Donald Trump, who closed his repulsive campaign by dropping the B word on Nancy Pelosi. The breakdown by education was stark. Harris won 57% of white women with college degrees and lost 63% of white women without them. It was also men. Trump won every age group of men, including 60% of Gen X men and 6 in 10 white men. Also Latino men, who despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen.
Joy Reid blames not only Gen X, but also white women, women without college degrees, men, and Latino men. I wonder if Joy has ever considered the possibility that she's maybe a little biased regarding Trump, that maybe these groups of people might actually have some pretty good reasons for trusting Trump over Kamala Harris. Here's more of The View blaming everyone other than themselves.
And finally, we talk a lot about these different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border.
It's
the border
misogyny.
crisis is on their doorstep. And they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some lessons.
That's what that was.
The lessons are not
Knock, knock. Who's there? Oh my gosh, it's Whoopi.
This clip is unbelievable considering the fact that the first woman was actually making a good point about Latinos' lives being disrupted by illegal immigration. But Sunny just arrogantly interrupts her and says misogyny. The elitism and arrogance from Sunny is absolutely sickening. Here's Joe Scarborough demeaning the character of people who didn't vote for Kamala Harris.
I will ask the question that I think is a fair question to ask. Who raised these people?
Yeah.
Because they were not raised by anybody in my neighborhoods that I grew up, any middle-class neighborhoods that I grew up in. These people were not there. They were not raised. I mean, they weren't in the classes I went to growing up in elementary or middle or high school or college. They just weren't there. That wasn't the America I grew up in, where people would laugh at the idea of people of the press getting shot. Like, everybody would like sit around and like, what's he talking about? Or again,
laughing at the Puerto Rican
other
joke.
things, laughing at the Puerto Rican joke.
My God,
that Puerto Ricans are a pile of trash. Are laughing at a 83-year-old man being bludgeoned nearly to death. That's an applause line. That's a laugh line. Again, who are these people? Where are they coming from? And who raised them? And how did Donald Trump twist their point of view so much in 9 years that the brutalization of an 83-year-old man is something to laugh about, or the shooting of press members is an applause line?
Yeah, laughs and cheers when Trump suggested the press should be shot. And my friend, the legendary photographer at the AP, Evan Vucci, who's traveling with the Trump campaign here, says that as each rally goes on, particularly last night in Georgia, the threats from the crowd to the press, they're there in the arena, only growing. They're really concerned there about the security situation.
There's so much dishonesty here, it's unbelievable. They're not only interpreting everything in the worst possible light, but they're also saying every single Trump voter is exactly the same, and they're completely ignoring similar behavior from their own side. Sure, there are some really bad Trump voters, but there are also a lot of completely normal people who just want to live normal lives and feel the policies of the Democratic Party are dangerous. Here's Joy Reid calling all Republicans fascists, which is simply not true.
And we begin our final sprint, having arrived at that point in the election season where basically we on this side of the TV screen have said all we can. We've laid out the stakes in this crucial election, where one side stands for freedom while the other meets the textbook definition of fascism, namely a far-right dictatorial regime like Hitler's Germany or Franco's Spain or Mussolini's Italy, but also white-ruled South Africa before Mandela and the black majority took control, or Vladimir Putin's Russia, Viktor Orban's Hungary, or Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela today, that suppresses the rights of women and minorities, uses the military to execute the whims of a strongman dictator, and controls and suppresses the press, education, the arts, rewrites history to suit a favored and dominant racial class, and foments extravagant corruption in order to enrich the dictator and his friends.
Joy Reid compares Republicans to dictators, to Hitler, to Mussolini, to Vladimir Putin, and every other fascist and dictator in the world. Trump actually did concede the 2020 election and has not proven himself to be a fascist. But the party of Joy Reid has actually sought to imprison Trump because he is their political rival, which seems a lot more like fascism to me. Here's a guest on The View saying something that leaves everyone on The View completely speechless. It's incredible to watch.
We're still here. People, when I got out of the car today, I saw mailmen, people with their kids. I saw people living their lives, and that's what we have to do.
Well, Whoopi, what you saw with your own eyes is pretty much impossible because, at least for the past 4 years, every single one of you on this show, including your friends in the mainstream media, you told Americans that Trump is like Hitler. You compared his supporters to Nazis. You called him a fascist, a racist, a dictator. And now that he is elected, you're telling me that Americans are going on with their lives? Like, why are you even sitting here, Joy? You said if elected, Trump will put you and Whoopi in jail for being comedians. Unfunny comedians, I should add. Maybe that should be a crime. I don't know. But all of you are sitting here and you are just fine. And that should not be the case if you really believed what you said about Trump. I don't understand.
The simple truth is that these people were all lying for political reasons. Trump is now the president-elect, and life will continue for these people with very little change. There is no fascism, and the American experiment has not collapsed. And one of the best parts of the result of this election is that the American people now see, more clearly than ever before, just how untrustworthy these people in the mainstream media are. But let's remember, it's not enough to stand against evil policies. People who voted for Trump, but have not repented of sin and put their faith in Jesus Christ alone for their salvation, are also still headed for judgment and hell for sin.
2 Corinthians 5:21, he made him who knew no sin, sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. Let me unpack those 15 Greek words. He, God, made Jesus sin. What do you mean he made Jesus sin? Only in one sense. He treated him as if he had committed every sin ever committed by every person who would ever believe, though in fact he committed none of them. Hanging on the cross, he was wholly harmless, undefiled. Hanging on the cross, he was a spotless lamb. He was never for a split second a sinner. He is holy God on the cross. But God is treating him, I'll put it more practically, as if he lived my life. God punished Jesus for my sin, turns right around and treats me as if I lived his life. That's the great doctrine of substitution, and on that doctrine turned the whole Reformation of the church. That is the heart of the gospel. And what you get is complete forgiveness covered by the righteousness of Jesus Christ. When he looks at the cross, he sees you. When he looks at you, he sees Christ.
If there is one thing in my life I want to make sure I understand, that's it. It is the gospel.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm a deacon, a husband, a father, a software engineer, and an amateur maker of videos. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help me in my mission to spread biblical truth, just subscribe and watch these videos until the end, which will help the YouTube algorithm recommend these videos to more people. I'm committed to using the skills and gifts God has given me to glorify Him and communicate biblical truth, and I would be so grateful if you would come be a part of what I'm building. You can visit my website at joyfulexile.com to learn more about me and what I'm working on. I hope you're having a blessed day. I will see you in the next video, and remember, this world is not our home.